You've traveled ancient temples where gods of every name were worshipped. Today, Muslims declare any partnership in divinity as the gravest sin. But can Islam's uncompromising monotheism coexist with respect for those who see the divine in multiple forms? Or does divine unity demand absolute exclusion? I'm Fakir al-Khamosh. In these 8 parts, I'll confront the fiery verses against shirk, trace historical encounters with polytheists, and stake a position on whether tolerance for genuine seekers can survive alongside tawḥīd's iron decree. Quranic prohibitions. Indeed, Allah does not forgive association with Him, but He forgives what is less than that for whom He wills. 4:48. This verse places shirk beyond redemption, yet sits among verses celebrating God's mercy toward repentant sinners. Prophetic encounters. At the conquest of Mecca, the prophet declared, "Today all gods are false except Allah," yet spared former pagans, inviting them to Islam rather than executing them. His clemency toward those who sincerely worshipped under polytheistic idols suggests a tension between doctrinal purity and human compassion. Classical exegesis, Sunni schools. All 4 madahib classify shirk as the foundational sin that invalidates worship. Legal penalties for public idol worship varied historically but were seldom enforced. Shia perspective emphasizes inner intention, niyyah, arguing that external idol removal must be paired with heartfelt conviction, highlighting the primacy of sincerity over spectacle. From the earliest caliphs to towering theologians, Islam's leaders have wrestled with how to treat polytheists. Swift exclusion or strategic engagement? Their choices echo today in how we confront religious diversity. The Rashidun model, Umar's tough love versus Ali's pragmatism. Caliph, Umar's edicts under Umar ibn al-Khattab, sites of idol worship were razed to affirm tawḥīd. He insisted public polytheism be removed from the Arabian Peninsula, believing that visible idols sustained shirk's poison. Accounts differ. Some say non-Muslims were allowed protected status, dhimmi. Others claim Umar pressured pagans to convert. His stance fused fear of apostasy with the urgency of monotheism's expansion. Allah's inclusive strategy. Ali ibn Abi Talib negotiated protections for polytheists who pledged loyalty, offering religious autonomy in exchange for civic cooperation. If the Lion of God allowed minorities to live and worship, what does uncompromising eradication reveal about our own zeal? Theological schools, from Ibn Taymiyyah's zeal to Maturidi's mercy. Ibn Taymiyyah, d. 1328, he denounced people of the book who accepted Christian doctrines as closer to shirk than idolater Arabs, declaring some ceiling for tolerance. His fatwas justified the removal of non-Islamic institutions as necessary for a pure Islamic polity. His heirs weaponized these rulings against Sufis and Shia, showing how exclusionary theology can fuel internecine conflicts. Al-Maturd died 944. Emphasized God's justice and wisdom, arguing that true faith must spring from understanding. He allowed theological dialogue and deferred punitive measures until the polytheist had fair exposure to Islam's message. When mercy precedes coercion, sincerity blossoms. Shouldn't our engagements mirror the Creator's patience? Punishment in practice, from idol smashing to dhimmi covenants. Early iconoclasm. In Mecca's conquest, idols around the Kaaba were destroyed, yet the Quraysh were granted safe passage and property rights. The symbolic act severed shirk's power while preserving social stability. Dhimmi contracts. Polytheists who accepted the jizya tax lived under protection, free to worship privately. These covenants institutionalized a hierarchy, faithful ones above, tribal pagans sidelined, but spared lives and traditions. I side with engagement over eradication. When theology demands absolute purity, it ignores the Quran's own plural precedents, like Noah's persistent invitation rather than instant obliteration. Monotheism need not mean monolithism. The brute removal of idols may clear a landscape, but it leaves hearts barren. True tawḥīd invites understanding, not only annihilation. If faith crushes diversity, then faith itself becomes idle. I choose the path of reasoned mercy, where dialogue replaces demolition and sincerity, not spectacle, defines belief. The Pact of Najran. When the Prophet met the Christian delegation of Najran in 9 AH, he negotiated terms guaranteeing their churches, scriptures, and clergy protection in exchange for attacks. This foundational treaty established that polytheists and people of the book could coexist under Islamic governance without forcible conversion. Ibn Hazm's absolutism versus al-Baqilan's nuance Ibn Hazm, d. 1064, maintained that all forms of polytheism, whether idol veneration or saint intercession, were equally unacceptable, insisting that only outright prohibition and social ostracism would preserve pure tawḥīd. Al-Baqilan died. 1013 argued that discernment was necessary. Some practices, though technically shirk, stemmed from ignorance rather than malice, and could be rectified through instruction and respectful dialogue rather than exile or confiscation. Regulating public worship. Early Islamic authorities permitted private worship of non-Muslims but restricted public processions, calls to prayer, and temple construction. This boundary between public and private practice balanced monotheistic integrity with communal peace. Dat al-Hijra and religious zones. During the expansion into Egypt and Syria, the concept of Dat al-Hijra, lands of emigration, designated newly conquered territories where the dhimma applied. Governors issued permits for worship and pilgrimage to local shrines, ensuring that polytheistic sanctuaries continued under regulated conditions. Jurisprudence of removal. Jurists codified that if a shrine or idol became a focal point for uprisings, it could be dismantled. Otherwise, existing places of worship remained intact, acknowledging the social significance of long-standing religious sites. When Islam spread across diverse lands, it encountered rich tapestries of local rituals. Instead of erasing every trace of pre-Islamic worship, communities often reinterpreted ancient customs, weaving them into new Islamic-inflected celebrations. These adaptations reveal how believers navigated the tension between tawḥīd's purity and the human need for continuity. Nowruz and seasonal renewal origins. Celebrated since Achaemenid times as the spring equinox festival, Nowruz marked the renewal of nature in Persia and Central Asia. Islamic incorporation. By the 10th century, Samanid and Buyid rulers endorsed Nowruz as a cultural celebration rather than an act of shirk. Poets like Ferdowsi and later Rumi composed panegyrics linking Nowruz to themes of divine mercy and spiritual rebirth, transforming a Zoroastrian rite into a broadly accepted Persianate festival celebrated even in nominally Sunni courts. Ritual elements. The Haft Sen table, 7 items beginning with S, came to symbolize Quranic principles, e.g., saber, sukur, allowing participants to honor both cultural heritage and monotheistic faith. Even Orthodox scholars in Bukhara tolerated Nowruz, viewing it as a harmless custom of the people, urf, so long as no idols were worshipped. Mawlid and the cult of saints, pre-Islamic precursors. Annual commemorations of tribal heroes or local deities were widespread in Arabia and North Africa. Transformation. From the 12th century onward, Muslim communities began marking the Prophet's birthday, Mawlid, with processions, poetry recitals, and charitable feasts, activities reminiscent of earlier seasonal festivals. Eminent scholars like Al-Uways and later Ibn Hazm criticized Mawlid as innovation, yet by the Ottoman era, Sufi orders institutionalized it, integrating qasidas, odes, that likened Muhammad to the sun, dispelling idol-worshipping darkness. Regional variations. In Morocco, the Feast of the Candles at Moulay Idris blended candle-lit processions around a saint's tomb with recitations of devotional poems. In South India, the Urs of Ajmer saw Hindus and Muslims jointly honor the Sufi Saint Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, demonstrating how polytheistic shrine culture found an Islamic analog. Shrines and sacred trees, tree veneration. Pre-Islamic Arabs worshipped sacred trees, e.g. the sidra. Islamic jurists forbade tree worship, yet allowed shrines near groves considered blessed by saints. Maraboutism in the Maghreb, the rise of Marabout shrines, tombs of local holy men, often co-opted pre-Islamic sacred groves. Pilgrims continued practices like circling the tomb or tying cloths on branches, now reframed as acts seeking baraka, blessing, through saintly intercession rather than idol veneration. Contestation. Reformers like Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab decried these customs as shirk. In contrast, popular piety held that visiting saints' tombs was an expression of love for God's friends, not worship of the deceased. Pilgrimage beyond Mecca, Lesser Hajj. In parts of North Africa and South Asia, local pilgrimages to saintly tombs adopted rituals, processions, feasting, gifting, that echoed pre-Islamic practices of visiting tribal cult sites. Community solidarity. These regional pilgrimages strengthened social bonds far from Mecca, demonstrating how polytheistic communal rites were recast into expressions of shared devotion. While many local rituals survived in altered form, physical monuments often posed a dilemma: preserve symbols of polytheism or raise them in pursuit of tawḥīd? Muslim rulers and communities navigated these decisions pragmatically, balancing reverence for the past with doctrinal imperatives. Palmyra and the Temple of Bel Late Antique Conversion. In the 4th century CE, the Temple of Bel in Palmyra, a sanctuary to the Mesopotamian god, was converted into a church, then later preserved under Muslim rule as an administrative hall. Islamic chroniclers note that Caliph Harun al-Rashid left the facade intact, repurposing the structure for state use rather than demolition. Symbolic reuse. This pattern, converting temples into mosques or civic buildings, demonstrated respect for architectural grandeur while depriving idols of religious function. Petra's monuments, maktub inscriptions. Early Muslim travelers carved Quranic verses onto Petra's Nabatean tomb facades, reinterpreting the rock-cut monuments as silent elegies to divine power. Local Bedouin guides recounted legends of jinn inhabiting the rose-red city, blending Islamic folklore with ancient myth, affirming that pre-Islamic sites could be integrated into Islamic cosmologies. Sindh's temple complexes from idols to icons. Following the Arab conquest of Sindh, 8th century, many Hindu temples were left standing but defrocked of icons. Crusader-style accounts describe wooden idols burned, stone statues defaced, yet the granite sanctuaries remained, later used as caravanserais and, in British times, archaeological reserves. Modern preservation. Contemporary Pakistani heritage laws now protect these ruins as national treasures, underscoring a post-colonial embrace of pre-Islamic legacy rather than iconoclasm. Anatolian rock-cut churches, Cappadocian conversions, Byzantine cave churches were rededicated as mosques or Sufi retreats in the Seljuk and Ottoman periods. Frescoes of saints were whitewashed, mihrabs inserted. The architecture endured as place for dhikr and communal worship. Tourist revival. Today, UNESCO recognition and ecumenical initiatives invite Muslims and Christians to jointly steward these sites, acknowledging a layered religious history. In our era, preserving relics of polytheistic or pre-Islamic past can foster interfaith dialogue and cultural pride. Rather than viewing these monuments as embarrassing relics of shirk, many Muslim societies now celebrate them as part of a shared human story. Cultural festivals at heritage sites, Java's Borobudur. The Buddhist temple in Indonesia hosts annual Vesak celebrations with Muslim and Hindu participation, sharing readings on karma and tawḥīd, emphasizing common ethical teachings. This practice reframes a polytheistic site as universal house of worship. Ephesus festivals. In Turkey, the ancient Artemisian vintage market invites local Muslims to sell crafts and host Sufi music nights among Greco-Roman columns, reinforcing a narrative of cultural continuity. Interfaith pilgrimages, Jordan's Petra Trail, guided tours now pair Muslim imams with Christian priests, leading pilgrim caravans through Petra by night, reciting psalms and Quranic verses at dusk under the treasury's glow, illustrating convergent reverence for spiritual heritage. Egypt's Dendera Temple. During the winter solstice, Coptic Christians celebrate the rising sun. Muslims join in devotional chants, interpreting the sun's light as divine manifestation rather than idol worship. Academic collaborations and museums, Iraq's Babylon renewal. Post-conflict efforts unite Muslim archaeologists and international scholars to restore Babylon's ziggurat platforms, framing Nebuchadnezzar's palace as testament to human ingenuity, not idolatry. Morocco's Museum of Amazigh Heritage exhibits showcase pre-Islamic stone stelae alongside Quranic manuscripts, drawing parallels between Amazigh reverence for ancestors and Islamic respect for lineage, inviting visitors to see a continuum rather than a rupture. Digital preservation and VR 3D scanning of ruins. Projects like DALL-E-based reconstructions allow users to experience Meccan Kaaba in its pre-Islamic form, prompting reflection on Islam's transformative embrace of monotheism. Virtual pilgrimage apps. Interactive guides offer layered narratives, polytheistic, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim, enabling users to toggle between historical phases at heritage sites, fostering empathy for diverse spiritual legacies. In contemporary Muslim thought, tolerance often means putting up with difference. But genuine respect demands recognizing the intrinsic value of other spiritual paths. How can we uphold tawḥīd's uncompromising monotheism while honoring the dignity of those who worship differently? Let's explore three interlocking philosophical dimensions: epistemic humility, the ethics of hospitality, and maqasid-based pluralism. The Quran's call to reflection, verse 49:13, "O mankind, we have created you that you may know one another," invites us to learn from diversity. The root arafah, to know, implies humility about our own limited perspectives. If absolute certainty belongs only to God, then denouncing others as irredeemably wrong risks arrogating divine prerogatives. Classical precursors. Averroes, Ibn Rushd argued that human reason can apprehend divine truth only approximately. Divergent theological schools reflect varied intellectual capacities and contexts. His recognition of religious multiplicity as a natural outgrowth of epistemic limits provides a foundation for respecting sincere seekers of truth. Modern application. Embracing intellectual modesty means accepting that our interpretation of tawḥīd may be enriched, not threatened, by honest engagement with other faith expressions. When we acknowledge we do not know all, Q 659, we create space for equitable dialogue, not unilateral condemnation. Prophetic model. The Constitution of Medina guaranteed religious autonomy. To each community its religion, Q 2267. This political covenant enacted hospitality. Former foes became protected kin, free to worship in their own sanctuaries. Hospitality versus tolerance. Tolerance concedes space. Hospitality invites nourishment. Just as a host offers food and shelter, a spiritually hospitable Muslim welcomes others into shared community life, learning their rituals, protecting their festivals, and valuing their ways of relating to the divine. Ritual hospitality. Examples include opening mosque iftars to non-Muslims, hosting Diwali gatherings in Islamic centers, or inviting polytheist artists to contribute to mosque decorations, acts that transform passive coexistence into active solidarity. Preservation of religion, hifz ad-din. The higher objective of safeguarding faith does not demand homogenization. Protecting the sincerity of belief means ensuring that each community can flourish according to its convictions, so long as core values, justice, mercy, human dignity, are upheld universally. Preservation of intellect and dignity, the Maqasid emphasize reason, AQL, and honor, karama. Criminalizing or ostracizing polytheists undermines both. It dismisses their capacity for sincere reflection and denies their innate dignity as God's honored creation, Q 1770. True pluralism honors these objectives by affirming every person's right to think and believe. Shared ethical ground. Many moral precepts, charity, compassion, care for the poor, span monotheist and polytheist traditions. Recognizing this overlap allows interreligious partnerships on social justice projects, rooting pluralism in concrete cooperation rather than abstract tolerance. Textual exchange. Organize reading circles where Muslims and adherents of other faiths read each other's sacred texts side by side, Quran alongside Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita, sharing insights, questions, and surprises. Reciprocal ritual observation. Invite polytheist friends to Ramadan Tarawih prayers and attend their spring or autumn equinox festivals. Participating respectfully in each other's rites dissolves barriers of fear and unfamiliarity. Joint ethical committees. Form councils including religious leaders, philosophers, and lay people from multiple backgrounds to address communal challenges, poverty, environmental degradation, youth alienation, grounding cooperation in shared moral concern rather than doctrinal agreement. Tawḥīd as ethical compass monotheism affirms ultimate unity without erasing earthly multiplicity. Just as all rivers flow into one sea, many spiritual paths can converge in ethical commitment. Tawḥīd then becomes not a tool of exclusion, but a compass guiding interfaith solidarity. Imagining a pluralistic covenant. Drawing on Medina's model, we can envision a modern covenant of creation, wherein diverse religious communities pledge mutual non-exclusion, shared stewardship of the earth, and mutual support in worship and service. An updated social contract that honors tawḥīd's spiritual depth while affirming human plurality. As Muslim communities disperse around the globe, they confront secular environments, nationalist backlashes, and internal pressures that test their commitment to philosophical pluralism. Can tawḥīd's unwavering monotheism survive without sliding into xenophobia or political expediency? Today, we map three axes of pressure: diasporic migration, secular state frameworks, and Islamist nationalist politics, and reveal how they reshape attitudes toward polytheism. Diaspora dynamics, from port cities to suburbs, identity negotiation in Europe. In capital cities like Paris, London, and Berlin, first-generation migrants often arrive from overwhelmingly Muslim homelands, carrying memories of local shrine visits and festival practices. Their children, educated in secular schools, question the rigid anti-polytheist doctrines of home. Why can my Christian friends celebrate Christmas, but I must denounce their faith? Pragmatic adaptation. Many European mosques now offer interfaith introductions, inviting non-Muslims to Ramadan iftars and offering contextualized lectures on shirk that emphasize shared Abrahamic roots rather than blanket condemnations. Yet internal factions push back, decrying such openness as watering down tawḥīd. Second-generation bridges. Younger imams from diaspora backgrounds craft khutbahs that draw parallels between polytheist customs in their parents' villages, tree veneration, saint commemoration, and the importance of cultural identity, urging congregations to honor heritage without equating it to shirk. North American suburbs. In U.S. suburbs, Muslim associations often rent multi-faith centers. Here, polytheist festivals, Diwali, Easter egg hunts, occur under the same roof as Eid prayers. This proximity forces communities to negotiate space. Should a mosque calendar list Hindu festival as a community event, or keep its schedule exclusively Islamic? Legal safeguards versus community norms. Civil rights legislation protects religious minorities, preventing local councils from banning non-Muslim gatherings near mosques. Still, informal social sanctions, glares in the parking lot, whispered criticisms, can chill interfaith participation, revealing how social shaming can rival formal exclusion. Migration to Muslim minority states. In China's Xinjiang or India's Kerala, Muslim migrants encounter local polytheist majorities. Some adapt by downplaying overt Islamic markers, blending into the religious tapestry, attending Hindu temple festivals while quietly observing tawḥīd at home. Others double down, converting entire households into mosque enclaves and lobbying for religious zoning laws that mirror dhimmi-style social segregation. Provocative tension. When polytheist neighbors smile at their presence but regard Islamic separation as suspicion, Muslim migrants ask, does tawḥīd compel us to wall ourselves off? Or can monotheism inspire genuine neighborliness under diversity? Secularism's double edge, freedom and alienation, state laïcité in France. France's strict secularism, laïcité, bans conspicuous religious symbols in public schools and government buildings. For Muslims, this means no hijab and, by extension, no visible Islamic call to tawḥīd in the civic sphere. Polytheist festivals like Ramadan lantern parades face permitting hurdles. Irony of equal exclusion. Officially, laïcité treats all religions equally, seemingly eliminating state-sanctioned takfur. Yet by forbidding public expression of tawḥīd, the state inadvertently levels monotheism and polytheism into the same private matter, undermining religious distinction rather than protecting it. American pluralism and free exercise. The U.S. Constitution's Free Exercise Clause guarantees public worship rights, so mosques and temples coexist openly. But the proliferation of religious freedom laws sometimes empowers Christian nationalists to claim exemptions from anti-discrimination statutes, forging alliances of convenience that cast Muslims and polytheists together as outsiders. Coalitions of convenience. In some states, Muslim groups join progressive coalitions defending pagan and New Age practitioners against zoning restrictions, recognizing that today's polytheist neighbor could be tomorrow's ally. Yet such alliances spark pushback from purist imams who brand any solidarity with paganism as compromising tawḥīd. Secular education versus Islamic ethics. In Malaysia and Indonesia, secular universities host polytheist scholars of Hinduism and indigenous animism. Muslim students attending these campuses confront alternative metaphysical frameworks, karma, reincarnation, ancestor worship. Some respond by crafting interreligious study groups, others by demanding Islamic ethics classes that reject all non-monotheist thought. Intellectual crossroads. When students learn about polytheist cosmologies in literature classes, they must choose between intellectual curiosity and religious caution, an everyday enactment of tawḥīd's tension with epistemic openness. Politics of purity and power, Islamist and nationalist currents, Salafi political parties. In Egypt's post-2011 landscape, Salafi parties like Al-Nour first embraced democratic participation, then waged campaigns against Coptic Christmas celebrations in public squares, claiming that visibility of Christian festivals violated public order and threatened tawḥīd's supremacy. Their street-level activism echoes medieval iconoclasm, weaponized for contemporary political capital. Electoral realities. Facing dwindling votes, some Islamist candidates pivot to inclusivist rhetoric, endorsing minority cultural rights to win moderate urban districts. But these shifts often prove shallow, reverting to exclusivity when political survival demands courting conservative bases. Nationalist movements. Hindu nationalist politics in India have led to mob attacks on mosques and temples alike, labeling both as foreign influences. Muslims, in turn, sometimes respond by closing ranks, rejecting alliances with polytheist communities, even in defense of shared heritage sites. Cycle of exclusion. When nationalists assert a singular civil identity tied to polytheist symbols, e.g., razing Babri Masjid to rebuild a Ram temple, Muslims feel existentially threatened and retreat into hardline monotheist postures, demonstrating how political conflict drives theological ostracism. State-sponsored Sharia versus dhimmi models. In Saudi Arabia, the state endorses a puritanical form of monotheism that excludes all polytheist practices domestically and funds Wahhabi-aligned mosques abroad to contest local traditions, erasing centuries of syncretic rituals. This exported exclusivism provokes backlash. Communities tighten local customs in defiance, creating a polarized global map of inclusion and repression. As top-down theology and politics fracture bonds, it's local communities, mosques, NGOs, youth groups that stitch them back together. From joint soup kitchens to shared disaster relief, grassroots initiatives test whether tawḥīd's unity can fuel pluralistic action rather than sectarian division. Shared social services community kitchens in Jakarta, Muslim organizations and minority faith groups co-manage free meal programs in flood-prone districts. Volunteers of all backgrounds prepare iftar plates alongside Hindu and Christian volunteers, distributing midday rations. This practical cooperation reframes other as partner in compassion, not object of suspicion. Health clinics in Lagos. In Nigeria, Sunni and Sufi doctors team up with traditional faith healers to staff pop-up clinics in underserved slums. By treating patients regardless of creed under one roof, they demonstrate that public health transcends doctrinal purity and that polytheist healers' herbal knowledge can complement biomedical practices. Interfaith education dialogue. Schools in London, after-school programs bring Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and secular teens together for joint study of ethics, covering Quranic tawḥīd alongside Hindu concepts of dharma and Buddhist precepts of compassion. These sessions use film, role play, and community service projects to build empathy and critical thinking beyond mere tolerance. Mobile Heritage Bus in Cairo. A converted tour bus hosts traveling exhibitions of ancient Egyptian, Coptic, and Islamic artifacts. Local imams narrate Quranic reflections on Pharaoh's arrogance, while Coptic priests highlight monotheistic continuity from Abraham. This rolling museum promotes shared roots and undermines the notion that polytheist pasts are irredeemable errors. Joint civic action, flood relief in Kerala. Muslim madrasa students volunteer alongside Hindu temple committees to rebuild homes after monsoon devastation. They pray together at construction sites, reciting Quran and Vedic mantras in rotation, revealing that solidarity in crisis can override doctrinal divides. Youth Peace Corps in Bosnia, young Muslims, Orthodox Christians, and Catholics launch Bridge Builders, a volunteer network repairing war-torn neighborhoods. Their public collaborations challenge narratives of irrevocable enmity, reframing Bosnia's religious mosaic as a shared patrimony rather than battleground. Digital solidarity platforms. One Faith, One Action campaign. Across social media, users post short videos of mixed-faith teams cleaning parks, tutoring refugees, or planting trees. Hashtags link to donation pages supporting both mosque expansions and temple restorations, underscoring that caring for any sacred space reinforces all spiritual home. Interfaith Alert Network. A WhatsApp group unites clerics, activists, and lawyers from multiple traditions. When a hate crime or mosque, temple vandalism is reported, members coordinate legal support, media statements, and community vigils, sending a unified message that attacks on belief are attacks on us all. Institutional collaboration, city councils of religious harmony. In multicultural cities like Toronto and Berlin, municipal governments appoint interfaith advisory boards with veto power over zoning regulations for any new house of worship. This ensures minority groups, whether a tiny temple or minority mosque, have a seat at the table before decisions affecting their rights are made. Faith-based social enterprises. In Indonesia, Islamic microfinance cooperatives partner with Balinese Hindu co-ops to fund women's handicraft collectives. Mixed boards allocate loans based on social impact metrics, proving that economic justice initiatives can bridge religious economies rather than entrench them in sectarian enclaves. As we conclude our exploration of polytheism and monotheism, it's time to turn insight into commitment. Here's a concrete pact that every mosque, community group, and individual can adopt to honor tawḥīd while embracing diversity. Drafting a covenant of respect, convene representatives of all local faith traditions, Muslim, Sunni, Shia, Sufi, Christian, Hindu, indigenous faiths, articulate shared principles, freedom of belief, protection of sacred spaces, mutual non-exclusion, publicly sign and distribute the covenant in places of worship, schools, and online shared calendar initiative create a community calendar listing major religious and cultural festivals, Eid, Diwali, Vesak, Nowruz, with brief explanations encourage interfaith participation, mosque open houses during other faiths' celebrations, and vice versa. Interfaith service projects organize regular collaborative service, neighborhood cleanups, soup kitchens, flood relief teams, rotate leadership and staffing among faith groups so each community both gives and receives support. Educational exchange programs establish faith immersion visits. Students and families attend another tradition's worship or ceremony, followed by guided discussion. Integrate comparative religion modules in madrasa and Sunday school curricula, emphasizing common ethical teachings. Digital Solidarity Network launch a hashtag campaign, e.g., #Pact of Unity, for sharing stories and photos of interfaith collaboration. Build a simple app or web page listing local interfaith events, volunteer opportunities, and contacts. Monitoring and accountability. Form a mixed faith council to review any incidents of exclusion or discrimination, with power to recommend public apologies and restorative actions. Publish an annual Unity report assessing progress, challenges, and personal testimonies. Personal commitment ritual. Invite individuals to recite a short vow, pledging to respect others' paths, to learn from different traditions, and to act with compassion. Embed this pledge as part of Friday sermons or community gatherings, so it becomes a living practice.